For more than 180 years, Middletown Christian Church has answered the call to live out God's love in Louisville. We've fed the hungry, cared for the vulnerable, built houses for the houseless, and spread a message of hope and inclusion for all people. We've celebrated the good times and come together through the bad. God has done great things through generations of Christians here at Middletown. But we believe God is just getting started.
So join us as we continue to move faithfully forward.
In the early 1800s, a religious movement with deep roots in Kentucky began to spread across the American frontier. This movement started in part as a response to the divisions that were developing between Christian denominations. Known as the Restoration Movement, its founders were concerned that if these divisions continued, Christianity would never reach its full potential and would never become the faith community God intended it to be. So they began working to restore the church to a single unified body of believers that set denominational loyalty aside and focused on what mattered most: faith in Jesus Christ. However, and this is so important, the unity they were seeking was not about uniformity. Their goal was not to create a church where everyone believed and practiced their faith in the same way. In fact, they were opposed to any type of formal creed or statement of faith that many denominations required of their members. The only thing they required was that people confess their belief in Jesus. Knowing this kind of church would create a diverse community that didn't always agree with one another and would sometimes engage in serious debate, they practiced an approach to faith that was developed by a German theologian in the 17th century in response to one of the bloodiest religious conflicts in human history. In essentials, unity; in non-essentials, liberty; in all things, charity. They believed and practiced that if we could agree on the things that were essential when it comes to being a Christian, there could be freedom of belief on most things, while in all things we are called to practice grace. Some of their other core beliefs and practices included an open communion table where everyone could participate, baptism by immersion, though baptisms in other traditions are honored, freedom of interpretation with informed reason, congregational autonomy. Churches were independent, could own their own property, and create their own operational structure, hire their own leaders, and they were not subject to church hierarchy. And they were not dependent upon clergy. Lay people could do whatever clergy could do within the life of the church. There were no barriers to ministry. That included being able to preach, teach, preside over communion, baptize, and perform weddings if the state government allowed them to do so. The Restoration Movement was primarily led by three men: Barton Stone, whose followers identified themselves as the Christian Church, and Thomas and Alexander Campbell, whose followers called themselves Disciples of Christ. In 1832, these two groups joined efforts and became known as the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. 4 years later, in 1836, 18 people became the charter members of Middletown Christian Church Disciples of Christ. In 1842, 3 trustees of our church purchased some land on Main Street in Middletown for $120 and built our church's first building. And when I say they built it, I don't mean they just paid for it. They built it with their own hands, furnishing most of the materials and labor. At that time, our church had Middletown's only bell tower. And it not only rang on Sundays, but it was also used as a call to fight fires and to recognize other important community events. The original bell cracked and had to be recast, but it is still with us and is now located just outside our sanctuary. In 1912, multiple upgrades were added to the building, including a stone front. They also added opera-style chairs for seating in the sanctuary. In the mid-1960s, our original building had deteriorated to the point it was no longer insurable. So the congregation demolished that structure and built a new one. And again, when I say they built a new church, I don't mean they just paid for it. They built it. Over 10,000 volunteer hours were part of the effort, and in 1968, this building was opened for worship. That building is now owned by Summit Academy on Main Street here in Middletown. Over the course of the next 20 years, our church experienced incredible growth, going from about 60 members to over 800. Due to that growth, the congregation needed more space, but with only 3 acres of land, there wasn't enough room to build what was required. So in 1990, we purchased this 67-acre tract of land. I thought you might find it interesting to see a picture of that original property on a map. It stretched all the way to Shelbyville Road. By selling some of that land for commercial use, the church was able to recoup the original cost of the land. Construction on our current sanctuary and the middle part of our building started in 1998, and on November 21st, 1999, we worshiped in our sanctuary for the first time. The formal dedication took place on December 5th of that year. Construction of the education wing began in the fall of 2005, and it was opened in 2006. As we near the 25th anniversary of this sanctuary's dedication, I want to take a moment to appreciate and honor the sacrificial faith it took to make this space possible. To get here, people had to be willing to leave a church they literally built with their own hands, a church where they had their children baptized and where they were baptized themselves, where countless weddings and funerals took place, a building filled with sacred memories. When the time came, church members carrying items from their old church walked from our building on Main Street to this one. It was a walk filled with excitement and hope, but there was also some grief and sadness. It's not easy to leave those kinds of things behind. We are here today because they knew the church and our faith was not just about them. They knew they were part of a bigger picture, that they were leaving a legacy for future generations. They were able to move faithfully forward in ways we must not forget and for which we must always be grateful. Of course, there is much more to our history than the buildings we have called home. There have been countless life-changing ministries that have happened in and through our church, and we have certainly impacted this community and world for the better. Middletown Christian Church has a rich history, and there is no way I could capture everything worth mentioning about our past in one sermon. Thankfully, through the efforts of some hardworking church members, I'm excited to share that we are nearing completion of a church history room that goes into much greater detail about our story of the past. If all goes as planned, we will open that space on November 24th of this year, which is less than 2 weeks before the 25th anniversary of the dedication of this building. I can't think of a better way to celebrate that milestone than to have a set-aside space honoring the journey that has gotten us here. I've had a sneak peek at the history room, and it is incredible. They have done a great job with it, and I can't wait for you to see it. Having talked a bit about our church's past, next week we're going to talk about where we are today. And then we will explore where God is calling us to go in the future. We've got a lot to celebrate and a lot of exciting things to talk about. But before we focus on where we are now and where we are going, it was important for us to pause and remember where we have been and how we got to where we are today. Because of the faith and hard work of those who have been part of this church since it was founded, we have been given an incredible gift. We've got a beautiful church home where we can worship, study, and be in fellowship with one another. We've got wonderful and welcoming spaces for our children and youth to meet and learn about what it means to follow Jesus and be part of a faith community. Because of our historical roots as part of the Restoration movement, we have a communion table that is open to everyone, a table that serves as a reminder of who God calls us to be, an inclusive community of faith where all really does mean all, and that everyone who gathers here is treated as the child of God they are. We're doing important work here. Our church and its ministries matter. Our community needs a church like this, and that need will only grow in the years to come. Because of that, we bear the responsibility and have the opportunity to nurture the gift we've been given in this place, to make sure that it benefits generations to come in the same way it has benefited us. We're going to talk about some of the ways we can answer that call as we continue this series. As part of that conversation, we are going to invite you to prayerfully consider not only how you will serve this church with your time and energy, but also through your financial gifts to God in the coming year. Tomorrow, we are sending out a special mailer that will include an estimate of giving card. We are asking that you fill that card out and return it, or fill out one online by November the 17th. Every gift you give to God through this church matters. No amount is too small. And we seek to be the very best stewards of every gift we receive. One of the best ways we can faithfully steward your gift is by building as accurate a budget as possible. Knowing your giving plan for the coming year really helps us to do that. As an incentive to participate, we will be doing a weekly drawing, the winner of which will get a $50 credit to our church merchandise store, where you can get some really great stuff. When you turn in your estimate of giving card or fill out the online form, your name will be added to the drawing. To increase your odds of winning, get your information in early so that you will be included in each of the 3 drawings. All right, there's one more thing to talk about today, something we are really excited about. For the past several months, we have been working with a local branding and marketing company to help us better get the word out about our church. As part of that process, they designed a new logo for us. The development of that logo was quite a process, and it took a lot of time and effort. They worked with church members, staff, and our board, seeking insights, getting feedback, and putting all of that together in a final look. The result could not be more perfect as we celebrate our 25th year in this sanctuary. As you can see in this image, the exterior arches that worshipers walk through each Sunday are reflected in the new design. But the arches are not just about our church's architecture. They also serve as metaphors for the kind of support and unity that people find here. Overall, the logo signifies that we are a welcoming church for everyone and that our doors are open to all who enter them. The color green was chosen to represent the beauty of nature that is found throughout our campus. Here is another style of the design. We've also got some great new logos for our children and youth ministries as well. If you'd like to help get the word out about our church, you can stop by the church office sometime soon, or the connection point if you come to church with us, and pick up a free sticker with our new logo on it. Put it on your car, your water bottle, your laptop, or wherever else you think people might see it. This is an exciting time to be part of Middletown Christian Church. It's also an important time to be part of this church. With the foundation that has been built for us, we are being called to create an even larger ministry presence in our community while also building a legacy for future generations. A legacy built on love, grace, and service. A legacy of welcome, inclusion, and belonging for all of God's children. A legacy that will continue to grow stronger if we, like those who have come before us, are committed to moving faithfully forward. Amen.